you saw that we were talking about language as a systematic device, as a system which is inbuilt in us. And if I ask you, where is language located in us, what will be the answer? Where is language located in us? Brain, right? It's question like, how do we see? How do we see anything? With our eyes, right? Right? Similarly, if the question is where is language located, the answer is, how do we know that? Answer is right and sounds very convincing, but then the question comes to same brain and mind, that we don't know whether it really comes to brain or not. But how do we know it's located in brain?
Because usage of language is a cognitive process, and all cognitive processes are done by brain.
Sure. And is language really a cognitive process?
Because we think when we speak, right?
So you are saying thinking is cognitive process, right? Can we not think without language? Can we or can we not? We can, right? How can you think without language? Visuals, memory. But how do we store such memories? We don't know these things. Understand the question. What is not important is we do not need to know answers to all these questions, right? At least right away. But we need to think about these questions at least, right? And is language really a cognitive process? Keep this question in mind. We'll discuss about it. Do we really need to think in language, or can we not think without language? Okay, these are some of the questions which are important for us to understand in general. They are not necessarily directly part of this course, but anybody who understands something about language or wants to understand something about language, these are the fundamental questions you will need to answer after you have acquired certain fundamental aspects of language, and when you can say, I know about language, right? So let me take you to more fundamental things, and then we come to these questions. So when we say language is located in human mind, we also want to say that it's one of the most sophisticated product of human mind. Rather, it's the only product which you can evaluate in a systematic way. We do many things with human mind, and all of them can be studied in a systematic way. For example, when we see something, we can study how the process of seeing works, right? When we what else do we do with human mind? What else do we do with human mind?
Comparisons, like mathematics, logic.
Logic, mathematics. What else? Memory. In a way, it won't be too much to say if we say we do everything with human mind, right? We as humans cannot function if human mind does not function in a particular way. At least we cannot function the way we do. One more question before we get into more fundamental questions, and this is again for you to think. What are the things that involves language? We talked about thinking, right? I really want you to think very hard. Do we really need to think? Do we really need language to think? Communicating ideas, of course. And when you are thinking about this question, do evaluate whether you need language for that or not, right? Similarly, communicating ideas. You may have wonderful ideas, right? You may be doing wonders in different aspects of life. Can we do such things without language? Can you talk about mechanical engineering without language? We need to decide which language we need to talk in, whether we need Tamil or English, that's a much later question, that's much trivial question. But can we talk about anything without language? Mechanical engineering just happens to be an example.
The expression inherently implies that we are using language.
Exactly.
So talking without language is kind of redundant, as in it's pointless.
That is what you are saying is it's not possible to do anything which involves another person.
No, I'm saying talking essentially has language.
Sure, I get your point.
Talking without language is pointless.
Let's remove the word talking. Let's say the word doing. Right? Can we do anything with others without language? And we don't want to get into the trivial aspects of this question. The important part is, in order to transact anything, we need language. Right? Therefore, it's also called, besides this definition that I have been showing you since yesterday, it's also called a medium of transaction among us, a medium of construction of any knowledge. Like you were talking about restoring memory or storing memory or communicating about ideas. These types of things are parts of construction of knowledge, and we can't really either construct or transact about such things without language. Okay? Such is the significance of language. And one of the reasons why we probably do not pay much attention to the need of looking at language in a systematic way, because it comes to us so naturally. Right? It comes to us so naturally that we really don't want to be very serious about it. All of you must have heard things like, we do not understand the value of the gift that we can see things. Right? If you want to understand how fortunate we are that we can see without making much efforts, without difficulties, you need to talk to people who can't. Right? The fact that we are able to walk without problems, and if you want to understand how difficult it could be, then you need to talk to people who can't. Right? Similarly, the way we learn to walk, the way we learn to see, or we happen to see, similarly we end up speaking. This is what I mean when we say it comes to us so naturally. Okay? And therefore it doesn't become such a serious thing for us to get into. However, when you get into the details of it, then you see the underlying system and get to know that it's really a complex system. Okay? And then we realize about its systematic arrangements. All right? Now, we have looked at these things. We were working on these questions, right? Let's talk about few more of them to come back to language learning. So, each one of us speak 2, 3, 4 languages, right? One can ask you this question both ways. Why do we not speak just one? If the purpose of language is to communicate, why do we not speak just one language?
It's rooted in geography, culture.
It's rooted in
where the language has been developed. So
language has been developed.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead. So, in other words, we are saying it's not possible to have just one language. No matter how important it is for communication, and then we know that if it is important for communication, then it would have been much easier if if everybody spoke all over the world just one language. Would not be difficult at all, right? Many of you must be familiar with the artificial language that computers or machines work with, right? I don't know names of all the languages, right? But I am assuming that machine A and machine B can communicate only when both of them have same language, right? They have difficulty communicating even if they have one has higher version and the other has lower version. You see the limits of artificial languages. However, it's not important for humans to be speaking just one language, and still we can communicate effectively over a long period of time, or even in a shorter period of time. We do find a way to communicate with one another, right? Therefore, many languages being around has very little to do with the answer that we need language only for communication. Get this thing? Then how many languages do we speak in India?
50.
You found that 1600. Do we know the names of all of them? No. Right? And it's important for us to in the beginning to know that one of the most authentic surveys that was done in India was around 1930, and it was done by an anthropologist called George Grierson. Okay, and that is called the name of that project was Linguistic Survey of India. Okay, it was easy for George Grierson to do because he got help from British officials. And how many languages are spoken all over the world?
6,909.
Something like 6,000 or 7,000, right? 6,900. How much did he say?
6,909.
6,909, right? Now, if you compare these two numbers, what's the percentage of total number that is spoken only in India? 25 to 35? 25 to 30, somewhere between 25 to 30. You see the linguistic diversity of this geography, right? It's not just 1/6 of world's population, but it's 30% of the languages of the world spoken here, right? We have talked about common things between languages and how they differ from one another, right? We will be looking at some of them in more details. Okay, and I come back to the total number in a moment again. Before that, I want you to know that when we talk to people in general, or even in classes in systematic way, most of the time the answers that come up are based on impressions, right? Like I wanted to show you the thing that we definitely use language for communication, but that is not the primary thing about language. Okay, we do use language for communication. The simple answer to what I am raising is, if it was only for communication, then we would have just one or few of them to make it easier. On the other hand, when you see the total number of 7,000 or 1,600, they do not seem to be simplifying communication, right? Therefore, such an answer is an impression that we think this is how probably language is important. Okay. Then when we start looking at it in a serious way, the first distinction that we make, and as many of you said, language is located in human mind, right? When we learn language, the role of human mind is very important, right? And it's one of the most sophisticated product of human mind. So there are two aspects of language. One is called I language and the other is called E language. And these are not complicated terms, they simply mean internal language and external language. Get it? Internal language and external language. What do we mean by them and why we need to make this distinction is following. Internal language refers to the language here, that is in our mind. Okay? And I'll elaborate that what we mean by language in our mind. And everything related to language that happens in human mind, when we study such things, then we say or we think we are talking about I language. Okay? E language is when it gets out of us. The moment it gets out of here, what does it become? Spoken language, of course, but that's part of society, right? Anything out of us in terms of language is society, and that's called the E language refers to everything that happens to external aspects of language, that is for the purpose of interactions in society. Okay? And whatever we do with society and language that is out of this is part of E language, is what we call E language. Is this distinction making sense to you? I language and E language? Okay. When we, and again going back to I language, when we study learning of language, right, role of human mind in language, and how human mind stores language, how language is processed in human mind, all such things are part of study within the domain of I language. Okay? And it becomes interesting only at the level of I language. Many people, many studies make this distinction, and rightly so, because not every study can include all parts of it. That's the distinction between I language and E language. We have looked at the distinction between language versus languages. Clear? Right? When we are talking about I language, we refer to language. Keep this in mind. We refer to language. And languages is part of E language. I think this doesn't require much of elaboration. The moment we say languages is part of E language. And the simple, not proof, but simple idea to elaborate this is, we can look at it. We don't need to go to laboratory for this. Think about the following question. If you speak two languages, Tamil and English, or Hindi and English, do you think you have two compartments in your brain? Are the words of these two languages stored in two different places? Yes or no?
Don't know.
We don't know. You can say no, they are not stored in two different places, but we really don't know. Right? Then with that, the fact that we don't know, okay, one more question about that. And trust me, these questions sound funny or maybe at times ridiculous, but they tell you something. Does it pain That is, do you feel any headache when you switch from one language to the other? No? On the basis of these things, we can say they are all part of one thing, right? Or for that matter, when we look at human mind as a bigger thing and language as smaller thing in it, we don't even know which part of this mind contains language itself. Forget about compartments of languages. Do we realize where? Here or here, this side? No? We can make sure that language is probably located here, because and this has been studied, this is not just part of a joke, that due to brain damage, we find language disorder, we find language loss, and due to other kinds of injuries, we rarely find any disorder in language. And if at all some other kind of injury causes language disorder, that's related to again human mind in a psychological way. Okay? It has been established that language has huge connection with human mind, but we don't know which part of it for sure. And at this stage I can tell you, it's not really that we don't know. There has been one study by Broca. Heard this name before? No. And one part of human mind is called Broca's areas. Broca's area. This scientist, what he did, he studied people who got language loss or some kind of disorder in language due to head injuries. And then this person finds that injury in a specific place, on a specific site, causes some kind of problem with language. And so he made a broad generalization that probably that area is responsible for language, and therefore because it was done by him, so that area is called Broca's area. So sometimes you will find people telling you that Broca's area is the area of language in human mind. Get it? So, but we really don't know. Even if we believe Broca, we have no reason not to believe him. But even if we believe, we don't know if other areas are responsible for language or not. Right? And then forget about finding smaller compartments about Tamil, Telugu and other things. If we go into more details of, let's say, a language called English, we don't know whether words are stored separately and then we pick words and make sentences. How does human mind make a sentence? Do we have a grammar stored in one part and words in the other part, and then we do it fast and come up with sentences without us even knowing, because there are a lot of things that happen in human mind which we are not so aware of, or so we cannot really keep up with our own mind. The kinds of things that are happening there, we really can't keep up with all of them. So keeping those things aside, all I am trying to say is it's not really possible to find out. Get it? So, and then I want to bring you to the point that the distinction that we have made between language and languages, right? And we have talked about certain principles and parameters governing languages. So, those are part of human mind. What is not part of human, we have no evidence to say that languages are like English, Tamil, Hindi in human mind. But we can hypothetically say convincingly that what is part of human mind when it comes to language is principles and parameters. Get it? And I'll tell you more about that in due course or in a few minutes. Okay, I hope that point is clear. We talk more about that when we talk about language acquisition. Let me talk to you about next point. We have we have briefly talked about that. It's a patterned system. By now, we have only been talking that language is system. I haven't given you any examples to show language is system, or for that matter, we have talked about very few examples, like certain examples of principles and certain examples of parameters that languages vary from one another, and they are part of, they are what make language as a systematic thing. But look at this, what I want to say right now. It's a system of arbitrary sounds. Okay? However, the whole thing, what we know as language, is not arbitrary, is a highly systematic phenomena. We will be elaborating on this aspect throughout the semester. Many examples that we will be talking about, whether we come back to this or not, will be around this. But therefore, it is important for us to know right in the beginning that it has a huge role of arbitrariness in it. By it I mean language. Language has huge role of arbitrariness in it, in the sense that it's a to begin with, it's a system of arbitrary sounds. And I'll elaborate that to you, what I mean by arbitrary sounds in a minute. However, language itself is not arbitrary at all. And that is what we mean by it's a purely rule governed system. Nothing happens in language which is just for that. It's possible that we don't know everything that is happening in language, just like we don't know everything that is happening in human mind. But we know certain things on the basis of which we can say language is not an arbitrary phenomena. It's a systematic phenomena, it's a rule governed phenomena. Now, let me give you a couple of examples at this point. So when we say okay, let's talk about what we mean by arbitrary sounds. Okay? What is this? Mobile. Why do we call it mobile? Which is, and I'm not asking you a philosophical question, okay? You can say it's portable, therefore we call it mobile. My question is even not to that extent. My question is, if we all called this something else, right? If let's say we call this aeroplane, will that be a problem? No, I know right now it will be a problem, because if I ask you, please give me your aeroplane, then we won't understand one another, there will be a problem, right? Which is called breakdown in communication. So we need to call it the same thing. If we are talking about one language, then we need to understand that whatever it is called, both of us know the same thing. That is going to relax communication. Otherwise, it will just simply break down, right? We cannot choose our own words for things, right? What is this thing? Slide changer. I cannot call it anything else, right? You cannot call it anything else. We need to call things the same way. That's for communication. But what I want to bring out is, if we all called this thing something else, then we will all call this something else, right? A pen. Why is it called a pen? Or for that matter, anything. Why is it called that? This is called a desk, right? We could have called it a room. It won't make any difference, right? In short, and I'm talking about a very significant point, that naming anything is arbitrary. Any name is arbitrary to the extent that as long as we know what we are talking about, we are fine. right? There is no reason why this should only be called a mobile. There is no reason why this should only be called a pointer or a remote control or whatever, slide changer. We could have called this also a pen, and then that thing as remote. Get it? So, naming things is arbitrary. And then if we call, let us say we have an object, pen. Again, one more time I will tell you, the meaning of arbitrariness is there is no reason why the word pen is associated with the object that it refers to. The association between the object and the word is arbitrary. Okay? At the same time, and if you understand that kind of arbitrariness, then you also understand why, what are the sounds involved in the word pen? Sounds involved in word pen. You understand the meaning of sounds? Words are made of sounds, right? So what's the first word of pen? And remember, first sound of pen. And remember, I am not talking about letters. And that distinction I will make again when we move ahead slowly. I don't want to talk about everything at a time. So I want to draw your attention to a very significant thing, that I am talking about first sound, not the first letter. What's the first sound in the word pen? Pa. Very nice. Pa. And what's the first letter? P. So now you can begin to see that the letter P is only a device to represent a particular sound. Okay? And that device is just designed to be able, just designed for us so that we can write something. That's not how we speak. What we speak is, the first sound is pa. And then you can begin to see that this sound is not specific to English alone. Do we not have this sound in our languages? We do, right? And then you will see in a more clearer way that sounds are common in languages. Okay? Okay. So let me come back to this. So why only pa, and then what's the last sound in this word pen? Na. And the middle sound? A. Why only these sounds in that word? Okay? That's also arbitrary. Okay? And I promise you I'll take you through certain more nuanced constraint on formation of a word to see that not any few sounds together makes a word. The construction of a word follows a very systematic constraint on them, which comes little later, but this is exactly what we mean by saying, when we say language is a system of arbitrary sounds. The association, and when we come up with a word, the association between word and the object is also arbitrary. But what is not arbitrary is underlying system. What we call language, what we refer to as language is not arbitrary, which is when we say Tamil is a verb final language. Remember this thing? We did this exercise yesterday. Tamil is a verb final language, or Malayalam is a verb final language, or Hindi is a verb final language. It never happens in a strict word order that verbs will start coming in the middle of the sentence. Okay? Some of you can argue that I can come up with a sentence, and a still good grammatical sentence, where verb is in the middle of it. But that is called scrambling. Because of the strength of the language, and I will talk to you about that strength little later, it's possible in our languages to move words around and still retain grammaticality of that sentence. However, in some languages, it's not possible to move words around, right? We can say, I am reading a book in our languages where we can scramble words around. Is that possible? How do we say this sentence in Hindi? I am reading a book. Anybody speaks Hindi? मैं किताब पढ़ रहा हूँ. Everybody understand this sentence? Yes? Can we move words around in this sentence?
say किताब पढ़ जा रहा है.
No, not changing anything. Just moving words around.
पढ़ रहा हूँ मैं एक किताब.
We can say that. That's still a good sentence, right? Can we do this with English sentence? Can I say, when I need to say I am reading a book, right? Can I say I book am reading? That sentence is not, and we are not trying to make fun of it. We are only trying to make a point that scrambling words around in a sentence in a given language may be possible, may not be possible. In languages like ours, it's flexible, it's possible, and because of that flexibility, we can still retain grammaticality of the sentence. However, the reasons why certain things are flexible and we still retain grammaticality does not mean that Hindi is not a verb final language or Tamil is not a verb final language. In a normal order of words, in a given sentence, verbs always come in the final position of a sentence. That is what is a principled behavior in language. Get this point? And this is not arbitrary. That is, languages do not choose that until 2014 we will remain verb final. See this thing? After 10 years from now, we will change. This doesn't happen. It never happens. Okay? And this is part of a systematic phenomena. This is part of a rule governed phenomena. Get it? We cannot have a sentence in any language of the world without a verb in it. You must have heard this word, verb, right? I'm sure almost all of you must have gone through some or the other language class. What are the languages you have studied in a classroom environment? English, of course, for everybody, right? Hindi for some people, or maybe many. Tamil? Nobody has studied Tamil in class? Okay, one person at least, two. So, the only reason why I am asking this question is when you study language in a systematic way in a classroom, then you come up with these words. People tell you these things, nouns, verbs, right? Subjects and objects. Therefore, I am talking about this thing. So, so far you may not have noticed this thing, or you may not have taken a note of it, or you may not have been pointed to this, but there is no language in which you have a sentence and sentence does not have a verb. Okay? And I can give you an example of that. Can you give me a smallest sentence? Smaller than that. Go. Very nice. That's a sentence, right? But other things with one word do not form a sentence. For example, if I say hello, is that a sentence? No. See this thing? The smallest sentence, go, is a sentence because it is a verb, which tells you that you may not have anything else visible in the sentence. One can argue that when we say go, we mean you go. So, you is not really visible, and therefore it's not just a word, it's more than a word. And that is not what we are talking about right now. We are talking about visible elements, and even when we have just one visible element, it's a sentence because has a verb and other things do not. Therefore, we can say verb becomes the most important part of a sentence, and we cannot create a sentence without a verb. And that is true for all the languages of the world. Okay? This is part of, this is what tells us language must be a rule governed phenomena, no matter whatever is the role of arbitrariness in it. All right? Okay. The last thing is, I think this point should be clear by now. When we try to make these things explicit, right, then you can say, I am doing linguistics. These things fall within the areas of linguistics. And by explicit, I mean, it's not that you don't know the things that I am talking about. And again, I'll be talking about lot of things which as a speaker of any language you already know. But such things are just not explicit. Okay? And this is just the, like take the example that we just talked about. It's not that you don't know that in the languages that you speak, for you to make a sentence, it's important to have a verb. Right? You know this thing, but it's just not explicit to us all the time. And it's not a fair question to the speakers of Telugu or Tamil or Hindi or any or for that matter English or French, for anyone to ask them this question, that do you know this rule in your language? This is not a fair question to ask them, because people learn these rules. The speakers of different languages learn these rules automatically. And the word automatic is very important. We will be elaborating on that. Okay? We don't know that, and I am using the sentence very carefully. We can say, when we are talking about language, that we can say language happens to us. Do you realize when you get fever? When you get fever? No, you realize. But do you realize when it is coming to you? I mean, it doesn't come to you, knock your door, say, I'm going to stay with you for 3-4 days. That doesn't happen, it just happens to you. We can extend the same logic that language from the very beginning starts happening to us. Okay? And I will elaborate on that a little in more details for longer time shortly. So this is what linguists do, and this is what happens in linguistics. Now, we don't have too much of time, but we'll try to do justice with at least one of these things, right? And then we will discuss the remaining part of it tomorrow. These are not again very serious questions related to the domain of this course, because most of the things in this course are going to be about I language. Okay? However, these are important things, just like the numbers of languages spoken either in India or in other places. To know that there are just so many languages, not just few. Similarly, these things are important for us to know. So if someone asks you, what's the national language of India?
No national language.
We have no national language. How about others? We have no national language. Why? What is Hindi?
It's official language. First official language, the second
It's
official
language of India, right? And this is an important thing to know. I must tell you, many people have this confusion. Many people will tell you, I don't want to blame anybody, whether purposely or ignorantly, that Hindi is the national language of India. That's not true. India does not have a national language. It has, the state policy on language says it only has official languages. Somebody said it's first official language. Does it mean we have second one too? So, that's not true. it's just like we do not have a national language, it's also true that English is not second official language. And the word in the constitution has been chosen very carefully. India is the only nation in the world which has a language component in its constitution. Okay? You may not be aware, or maybe you are, I am not trying to trivialize it or underestimate you. When did India get independence? Understand? We know this thing. When did we get our republic set up? That is, when did the constitution get in effect? January 26. Remember, we celebrate two different things, 15th of August and 26th of January. What happened on 26th of January? Constitution came into effect. Why did Constitution not come into effect on 15th of August 1947?
We didn't have one.
We didn't have one? Are you saying that we created this big document in 2 years only? That's not true. Many parts of Constitution, I'm not an expert on Constitution, so I cannot tell you this thing with authority, but many parts of Constitution were already accepted from the existing documents around that time. You may hear many a times, even these days, that certain things we are following from British system. We are not following from British system per se. What we mean is we adopted such things from British system in our constitution. What delayed acceptance of that document for 2 more years was a debate on language. There was a committee set up, it was called, that is famously known as Constitution Assembly Debate. Okay? There was a chairman of that assembly, and then all kinds of debate took place. The longest debate was about language. Okay? If you are interested in this, these documents are available online. I'm not sure if it is available on Wikipedia or not, but you will definitely find documents related to Constitution Assembly debates, and then such documents relating to language. Not necessarily you have to read that, but if you are interested in this, sometimes you can look at it. What happened was, the decision about language took longest time. They still did not settle this question. After the long, and it happens normally that when we do not have a consensus, we settle down with some compromise formula. And that was the most significant thing to come up with. And this is where this question is important, that English is not second official language. Like Hindi, in that assembly debate, in those debates, many people wanted to declare Hindi as national language. Okay? Many people wanted to declare Hindi as national language, but that did not happen. What happened was, Hindi was declared as an official language of India, which was also very difficult. Okay? Then, English was declared as associate official language of India. And there is a difference between first and second. When we say something first and something second, we are trying to put them in order. And when we say associate official language, that is because it was put in place at par with Hindi. So you can, it's not second, it's just one and associate. You may see even now, after how many years of independence? 60 or so many years of independence, that people talk about many things in English, even in our parliament. That's the reason for this. And then one more thing I tell you, and then we stop. We will talk about rest of these things tomorrow. It was also decided that we will review this question of English after 10 years. Okay? Which was around 1960, 61 or 62. Do you know something significant happening around 1962, 63? China War, Pakistan Wars, and one more significant thing that happened was the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Nehru, died around the same time. around 63, 64. And if you look at our political system carefully, there were a lot of instability at that time in political sense. And then this question did not get revised at that time, was not brought for revision. And the more we moved ahead in time, more difficult it became to revise this thing. And until today, everybody just wants to leave it the way it is. Because you can understand the sensitivity involved with issues related to language. This is the position on it: national language, official language, and a state policy on language. The last part that I told you that people do not want to discuss is my addition. Okay, this is not official. Okay, but as you can see, it's true that people don't want to discuss, and rightly so, because it has potential for many issues. And this is the only time when we are talking about these far too external things about language. We will be restricting to I language. And also one more thing I want to say, with which I want to conclude. A systematic study of language in a scientific fashion, and particularly the aspects of language which are rule governed, takes place not with emotional issues. So many of the things that I am going to be talking to you about has no association or relation with anything emotional about languages. In fact, if you understand, in the last so many years, nothing scientific can be done when you bring in emotional issues in it, right? Science doesn't move any further after that. So knowing very well that language is a marker of identity, it has potential to create many problems in the real world. Many of the things that we will be talking about is related to I language and only scientific aspects of language. Okay? However, we will still discuss the last two things tomorrow, which is the distinction between language and dialect and language and variety. I invite you to take a look at these things like you have looked at a number of languages in India and around the world. I am very happy about it. So please look at these things also. We begin talking about it tomorrow. Thank you.